Open IDEO team members today for our Amplify Storytelling Office Hour. So to get a little housekeeping out of the way, I just wanted to remind you all that you are now muted. And so if you have a question or if you want to raise a hand during this office hour, you will see that at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a little chat bot down at the bottom. And there's also a capability on that table area for you to raise your hand. And so if you ever need a moment and you want to speak up during this challenge, just click raise your hand and we will try to answer your questions as best we can. Also, please feel free to use the chat section to ask any questions or say your name and introduce yourselves to everyone in the group. We have about probably 18 people right now, just in these first couple minutes of our office hour, joining us from across the world. We have me in New York, Chelsea in San Francisco, who's one of our Open IDEO Challenge managers, and Scott from Cambridge as well joining us. So we are using Zoom for the first time, and this is definitely an experience of sorts, but this is the best way and kind of an experiment for us to have it be really interactive and really engaging for this Open IDEO Storytelling Office Hour. So for the next hour, we will be online here ready to ask and answer any of your questions you have about our upcoming Amplify Challenge. And just a reminder that please select chat at the bottom of your screen to participate in the office hour. So raising a hand as well as asking a question in the chat section. So we have a few options for your video layouts in Zoom, so please feel free to play around with that and have it work best for you. And we're going to kick it off. So I'll leave it to Chelsea and Scott to introduce themselves. So take it away, you two.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Chelsea, as Kati said, and I am the Amplify Challenge Manager. I'm calling in from San Francisco today. And I'm really excited because there's been so much interest about this office hour. So we're really, really happy to be able to share with you a lot of Scott's wisdom today. So Scott, do you want to do a brief introduction?
Oh.
We'll get Scott unmuted over there.
Oh, just 1 second. There we go.
There we go. Hey, I'm here. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with all of you. My name is Scott. My background is as a journalist. I wrote for the Washington Post and MTV. And I'm really excited to be here because I think that storytelling is so important. I mean, I think that everyone in this room does really incredible work. But in order for us to get funding, in order for us to get partners, in order for us to get people to really understand what we're doing and to buy into it and participate, we really need to be able to tell a really great story about it. And so hopefully in this hour, you can get some tools on how to do that, and we'll workshop a little bit of that as well. And I think we'll also offer some resources so that you can build those skills outside of this hour too. Really excited to be here.
Thanks so much, Scott. Would you like to lead us in a quick little icebreaker to get everyone going?
Yeah, sounds good. I was actually going to lead, we had this idea of doing like a jumping up and kind of, physical activity. So I'm going to play a song, and it's just going to be 30 seconds, okay? And we're just going to, it's going to be Rather Be by Clean Bandit. And we're just going to do a little bit of like however you want to move to this, however you want to just let the energy, let your muscles kind of, I think we're all sitting in front of a computer. We just want to get some energy within us. Like, let's go ahead and do that. So I'll start the song. Here we go. So, it's an invitation, if you want to kind of, do a little bit of just like 30 seconds of dancing. There we go. Oh, I like some of the moves here. Here we go. Evans, very nice. Okay. Katun, very nice. Isaac is like loving this. We're kind of dancing. Okay, here we go. Just 10 more seconds of dancing. Here we go. There you go. Okay, do you feel like your heart moving a little bit more? I'm going to turn down this music. Hopefully your heart is beating a little bit. You got a little bit of laughing in. I think we also wanted this hour to be playful. I think sometimes it can be like, oh no, office hour, and we wanted to make sure that you're having fun. You're also getting a lot of interesting information, and that this is a pause for you and your amazing work to just take a step back and think about what's needed. So thank you for participating in that. I know it can sometimes be scary to dance in front of people you don't know in different countries. So really appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Scott, and thanks for Kati for kicking us off. Before we jump into the storytelling piece of today, I just wanted to set a little bit of the context for where we are in the challenge. And I know that a lot of you joining today might be shortlisted candidates in our current Youth Empowerment Challenge on Open IDEO, which is really exciting. Welcome. But I think we also may have some others with us as well who are just really interested in learning more about storytelling. So welcome to all of you. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. So to set the stage where we are currently in the challenge, the past 2 weeks have been full of expert feedback. So all of the lovely ideas in the shortlist are had been reviewed by experts. And so to the shortlisted candidates, just know that if you have not received feedback yet, do not worry. There's a lot that goes on in the back end of the platform, so we'll get that feedback to you early this week, ideally. And today, really exciting, we're shifting into a new phase in the challenge, which is called Improve. And this is the final opportunity for our amazing participants to refine their idea in the platform. And so you'll get a lot more information about that today via email, per usual. So look out for that today. And mainly these 2 weeks are really meant as a time for you to finalize the way that you tell your story on the platform. So you might be finalizing some experiments, getting in a little bit more feedback from your communities, finalizing some prototyping, and a lot of refining the way that you tell the story, which is why we thought today and right now in this moment would be a really lovely time to talk about storytelling and what that means. And then before we jump in, there were a few questions that came in ahead of the office hour today about the challenge in general, so I'm just going to address those really quickly. And someone did ask, what happens to the 95 shortlisted ideas after some top winning ideas are selected? And as you may know already, on January 23rd, coming up in 2017, we'll be announcing the top ideas to the whole community, which is really exciting. Typically, there are about 5 of them. And for those that are not selected as top ideas, they still, those ideas still remain on the platform. And we hope that it's really a space where you can continue to grow and nurture your idea and welcome people to continue to come visit and provide you feedback and still iterate on your idea and still really leverage the Open IDEO community. And then another question that came in is, will successful ideas be subjected to full proposal writing? And the simple response to that is no. Before the ideas are announced, there will be some conversations with some of the top ideas with the Amplify team, but there's not a full proposal. After they're selected, there's an amazing boot camp that happens, and then there's some prototyping that kicks off from there. So jumping right into the work. And then lastly, this is a great question, I'm really glad that someone asked this, is they wanted to know exactly what Open IDEO looks for in an idea. And there's some resources I wanted to direct you to. If you check out openideo.com and go to the Youth Empowerment page, if you go to the challenge brief, which is a page that has a lot of information about the context of this challenge, there's a few different areas there that I think will be great resources for you. One are the mission areas. So these are some really key areas that we've identified as important pieces to work in around youth empowerment. Things like developing soft skills and creating entrepreneurs and managers. A second thing is our design principles for this challenge. So for example, designing for gender equality and inclusion, or making sure that skills match the markets. So there's a list there as well that provides more information about that. And then mainly what you might be looking for is something that we have included on our submission criteria PDF, which is linked on that page, which tells you exactly what we're looking for. So things like, do you really have the capacity to implement? So do you understand, the needs of your beneficiaries? Also, are you taking a new approach to the problem or thinking about things in a different way? So we do try to be really transparent about what we're looking for. So I welcome you to review that, and then shoot us a note if you have any questions, amplify@ideo.org. We try to get back to you as soon as we can. So that's it in terms of questions right now about the challenge. So let's get started thinking about storytelling. I just wanted to set the stage for what, the order of how things are going to work today. And so we'll talk a little bit about why storytelling, which Scott has already started to touch upon. We'll think about how to make stories clear and compelling, which you might have learned a little bit about in the storytelling toolkit if you've read that. We'll talk about the importance of feedback to your ideas and your stories, which is so critical. And then we'll do all of this by modeling what feedback looks like. So we hope some of you are brave and really willing to share one sentence about your idea, and we'll chat through that a little bit. We'll share some tips. We'll have time for Q&A, and then that'll be it. So I think we should just kick off so we make time for all of this. Super exciting. So why don't we start off with Scott telling us a little bit more about why you think storytelling is so important to especially the participants in our challenges.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Chelsea. And I'm biased because I've done storytelling for the last 10 years, but I think that we're all story beings as humans. And the reason why I have a fire tattooed on my right wrist is because I truly believe that stories are what helps us empathize with people and helps connect us to other people and will help us do the good work that we're all trying to create in creating a new paradigm shift and actually bringing good to the world. So I just wanted to first honor you all for being a part of this conversation and learning the skill. And I also wanted to just preface that storytelling is a muscle that needs to be developed over a long period of time. And so I've been doing it for 10 years, but there's still so much that I need to learn and continue to do. So see this hour as an opportunity to start exercising and flexing those muscles. Why it's important, I said some of the things earlier in this workshop. One, it's just like, let's be real. We need funding and we need capacity to get our organizations either off the ground or to continue to deepen the work that we're already doing. I was a social entrepreneur for many years, and a big part of bringing in sponsors or funders or people that can actually not just give you mentorship, like supporting you and thinking about things, but actually give you capacity in taking your work to the next level. A big part of that is storytelling. You need to be able to tell a really clear and compelling story. That's all it comes down to. Another reason why it's important is to this point of empathy. So as a organization, you're going to be better at asking the right questions to learn more from the people you're serving. Because with design thinking and human-centered design, the whole goal is to bring products, services, organizations in the world that actually meet the needs and dreams of people. And we need to actually be able to tell and tell stories, but also listen, right? A story I really love to share quickly is just Dan Rather, who's a journalist, was interviewing Mother Teresa and asked her at night, what do you pray for? And she said, oh, I listen. And Dan Rather said, oh, that's interesting. So what does God tell you then, Mother Teresa? And she said, he listens too. And I think the important part of that is that listening is a skill that we often don't think about with storytelling. I mean, the emphasis is on telling, but listening is a key part to the story process. And we'll talk a little bit about how you can use that muscle and skill to really deepen your storytelling. And then lastly, I think, building teams and helping them understand what your vision and your mission is. Storytelling is a key part of training. It's a key part of having people take your vision out into the world and actually convey the message you're trying to bring across to the world. So I think there's a lot of other reasons that I'm not going to name. I could name them forever, but I think those are the three that I think are really important to you.
Thank you so much, Scott. And I really like this you put on listening, because I think that really rings true as well for the work that a lot of our participants are doing, where listening is so key to understanding how to best serve communities. So Scott, a lot of questions came in advance, which was wonderful, but a lot of them were really asking about the basics of storytelling. Is there like an ABCs of storytelling? I know there's not one formula that fits everything. Are there some really key important tips and tricks or do's and don'ts of storytelling that you think you could share with the group?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, I think, like I said, it really just comes down to being clear and compelling. I think when we're designing a story, we can think about a lot of different things or ways that we want to structure it, the form, the medium, should it be video, should it be copy? And I think before we even start thinking about that stuff, let's just make sure that you have a clear story and a compelling story. How do you know if it's clear and compelling? Great question. One way that you can do that is by sharing. It's what we call at IDEO the bar test. It doesn't have to be a bar or a restaurant, but basically it's the idea is about going out into your community and telling people your story and asking for their reactions or their feedback. Really simple, but I think when you start to do that, you can start to see areas that need to be more clear, and you can understand whether it's actually compelling people to do something, right? Because you want your story to serve a purpose. I think another tip that I would think about is is this idea of success. And what success stories is in the toolkit, and we'll be sure to send that out to everyone to make sure that you have that storytelling toolkit. But it's simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, emotional stories. So success, simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, emotional stories. So I think that there's different recipes for creating a really great and compelling story, but that's the model I like to use. The end goal is to make sure your story sticks, right? Like in a year or 2 years, will someone remember your story and be so pulled by it and want to continue to do something? So we'll talk a little bit about how to make that happen too. But those are some good tips to start with.
Perfect, great. And we will definitely be sure to share that toolkit again with everyone after the office hour today to make sure you all have it. And that's a great framework. Thank you so much for sharing about that. Another really popular question was, how do we really explain or simplify super complex or technical ideas, which in the case of this Youth Empowerment Challenge, there are a lot of those. So how do we take that really big, complex idea and simplify it so that you can discuss that and share that with people of, different backgrounds, communities?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it's important to see storytelling as a journey. So I think even as a journalist, when I was working at the Washington Post, I also struggled with wanting to give the reader everything that they needed to know to really contextualize, why the story was important. But then what I found was a lot of readers were really confused, because the more information you give them that they don't understand, the harder it is to truly, follow through with what the narrative of the story is. So I think what's really important is to see it as a process. So what do I mean by that? Think of the first time that you share a story. In this case, let's say the Open IDEO platform. There is a group of people that really want to support you because you're doing really amazing work. And I think it's really important to think about the goal of your story, right? So the goal of the story is to communicate the work that your organization is doing, so that in hopes you'll be included in this portfolio and get funding, right? To just really lay it bare. So you want to get them really excited and inspired, but also to the point that Chelsea was making earlier in this call, credibility seems to be something really important too. So you also want to make sure that your organization is credible and actually has the ability to do the work that you said you're gonna do. So first I would list all the different goals, whether it's in this situation or another, of what do you want your message to actually do. And then the second thing is, how do I achieve that goal in as little words as possible? Because everyone is very limited on time. You know this as entrepreneurs and as leaders of organizations. The same is true for funders or anyone else that is going to be involved with your organization. So the clearer and the faster you can get to your point, the better. And so one way that we like to do that is just by thinking about narrowing down from the big organizational story to maybe one paragraph to maybe one sentence. So what is that one sentence that you would say to demonstrate what your organization does to your grandmother? What is that one sentence you would say to demonstrate what your organization does to another organization working in your sector? What is the one sentence that you would say to someone that is a funder, right? And so I give those 3 examples because every sentence will look different. So I think that's another trap that a lot of people fall into. It's like, I'm just going to make it simple and copy and paste it in every single context. But the second part is really understanding your audience and knowing what's clear to them. So I think that's kind of where I would start at.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think that's really key as well, because the Open IDEO community is one of those audiences. So thinking about what is the Open IDEO community looking to learn, and it is sort of intentional that our platform only gives you so much space to tell your story, because it's encouraging you to tell it in a very succinct and clear way. So if you have questions about how to do that in the platform, let us know. But I mean, one great, as we talk about one sentence about your idea, there is a place on the platform where you can put that one sentence, and it's at the top of the page. That's really intentional. So thinking about how to use the tips today to improve your idea on the platform in a really concrete way. And is there anything else that you might be able to expand on, Scott, in thinking about what to include versus what to not include in a story? We did have a lot of questions come in about that. Like, how do I really decide, what is worth putting in the story? What kind of tests can you do there to think about that?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I also saw a hand up. I think that I think that it's a really iterative process, and that's not like it's not a simple answer, right? That's going to look differently in every context. So what I just want to make sure that comes across in this workshop is that what you create for Open Idea will look different for another funder in a different context. I just want to make that really clear. But as far as different tips, I think that one thing that I might think about doing, and I think there's a lot of different tips, and we could talk about this for many, many hours, but I think, let me root it in an example, maybe. I think this would be helpful. So we had, in one of the past challenges, we had someone working with an organization in Uganda that was planting trees, and the proceeds from those trees would help with employment opportunities for people in this village, and also create an identity for that community. So when they first put it on the platform, this individual just shared everything. It was like, here's like 3 different people we're serving. Here's their life story. Here's why it was so important for each of these individuals to come to our organization. Then they introduced the organization. They're like, here are all the different projects that we're working on. Oh, besides the tree planting thing, we're also doing this other experiment on trying to understand the social entrepreneurship ecosystem in Uganda. Oh, let me talk a little bit more about that. And then let me bring you back to the impact that we're making, the impact that I'm including. It's looping in new people that I haven't even introduced yet. So basically what I'm trying to say is that there wasn't a clear thread that was going from beginning to end. And they're introducing a lot of different ideas, people, or things that their organization focused on that actually weren't crucial to the story and the goals that they had. So what we did was, when we helped workshop with them, was maybe you don't need to include 3 people. Maybe you just need to include 1 person, and make sure that one person really speaks to your sentence of tree planting to create youth employment opportunities. And then let's make sure that we don't include, you have a lot of different things going on with your organization, but let's really focus in on this project that your organization is doing. And let's also include the impact part of the story to show how this individual that you introduced in the beginning of the story was impacted as a result of your organization. Don't introduce a new person. So I think that clarity is really important, and also there's a cutting process of making sure that you're not including things that aren't necessary.
Great. To take that one step further, I wonder, Scott, if you could perhaps share one sentence about some of your previous work. Perhaps, I know in addition to being a storyteller, you've been an entrepreneur as well. Maybe you could share with us one example of a sentence about the work that you were doing to give an example of what might be a clear sentence about an idea.
Mm-hmm. So the one sentence I used for the work that we did, and again, it looked differently for different audiences, but for this audience would be, Saga is an organization in Iceland that produces music festivals to help people connect with local organizations working on environmental preservation. So what you should get out of that is, like, we're an organization, we run a bunch of music festivals, we do it in Iceland, and we connect people to organizations that work on environmental initiatives. And that's all we did. And we did a lot of other things outside of that, but that was really the core of our mission. And that took many months. It's just one sentence, but it took many months of actually talking to people and getting their feedback on that.
Thank you so much.
God, thank you for that. I just want to remind folks during this session at all, if you have any questions, please go to the lower hand of your screen and click the chat button, and then in the chat box say raise your hand, or if you have a question, and then we can go and unmute you and get answers to your questions as soon as we can. All right, thanks, guys. So we do have one question from Thomas from Amsterdam, and he asked, how do people experience the difference in pitching to a donor versus an investor? I'll let one of you two tackle that.
Yeah, or if anyone else in the room wants to share too, I think it's a great opportunity for someone to share.
Yeah, and there's a bit more, I think, context is there as well that everyone can read too about the question that you shared.
I can share experience coming from both sides, I guess, as an entrepreneur and funder, and would be curious what others say. I think the question was, how does it, could you say the question one more time, Kati?
Yeah, so how do people experience the difference in pitching to a donor versus pitching to an investor?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. So for us, it looks differently, and even in those buckets. So every donor and every investor will have different priorities. So what we usually did was we set up a meeting just like this with a donor or with an investor to understand what they were looking for in the story that we were trying to craft, and then we would build from there. I think that's just like a very simple one. I think there's a lot of other things that I can unpack in that, but that's just one tip.
Perfect.
Great. Thanks, Scott.
I think it's a great time for us to just try giving our participants an opportunity to share their ideas.
Yeah.
If they want to
let's move into that. That sounds great.
Let's give that a try. I'll just say that this is a really safe space, and we hope that you feel able to share your ideas, and we'll provide some quick feedback here, but also willing to talk more about this afterwards. So feel free to either raise your hand if you have that functionality, or type raise hand in the chat box and Kati can unmute you. Or if you're more comfortable, just type the sentence into the chat box and we can read it for you if that feels better. And just to be respectful of time, let's just share your name and then your one sentence, maybe where you're from. And we'll start with 5 and see how long that takes, and then move from there. So we'll give everyone a few seconds here to go ahead and either type in their idea or let us know they'd like to be unmuted. And we know it can be really scary to share your idea with a group, but the feedback is just so important and a really critical piece. And I think, Scott, you would say like where the most learning comes from, really, right? When thinking about how to structure and rethink your ideas. And
absolutely, yeah. We have a couple of people, I think, that were raising their hands to share.
Do you want to call out their names, and Kati can?
Yeah. I think is Thomas one of them? I think I saw Charles. Was Charles also?
Great. So you guys, it would be really helpful if you raise hand in the chat bot, and then we can go in and unmute you. So thank you, Thomas. I'll go ahead and unmute you. Just one sec. There we go. Take it away, Thomas. Thanks for joining us.
Do you hear me?
Hi.
Yes.
Hi, guys. Yeah, it relates to my question here. For a social business I'm developing, we have developed a business plan. And obviously there are a lot of assumptions in our business case. So I've made a pitch book to present our story. And the story is very convincing, I think, but it's based on a lot of assumptions. So what I see with donors, a lot of the donors are also changing. They are not only grant makers, they seek opportunities to put their grants in a sustainable project. But sometimes I doubt if the story might not be too convincing. Because often donors might say, hey, your business plan is, sounds so promising, just go to an investor. But if I go to an investor, they might say, well, there are so many assumptions in your business case, it's too risky. And maybe your scale is still too small. So please find a grant. So I am, sometimes stuck in the middle. Sometimes I might have the feeling like maybe I need to be less promising in my business case. I find it difficult to have like one business plan that I can use for both. So my question is, should I really make a pitch book per target group? Or do you think you can actually balance the two target groups with one single pitch book?
So I think it's a great question. I want to parking lot it because we're going to go into compelling and talk a little bit more about these types of questions in the next part of the workshop. And again, I think the short answer is yes, you have to make books for every audience, which is a lot of work, but yes, that's the route that most people take. And I think I just want to reiterate, say your name, say that one sentence. Like, I think this is for this first part of the activity, like let's really focus in on clarity. And then I think Thomas brings a really great point. And when we move on to the next part of the workshop about how do we make sure that we all have these different questions that we want to bring up, and we'll make sure that we answer all of them. But I think it's a great question, Thomas.
Great. So Kathleen, you are unmuted. Take it away.
Hi, and I apologize for the technical issues I'm having. I'm in a very narrow bandwidth place right now, so I apologize for that. But I'm Kathleen. I work for Global Grassroots, and we provide training, skills, resources, and support to young women across East Africa and South Sudan to bring their own solutions to social issues in their communities that are important to them, such as early marriage or girls' education, domestic violence, things like that.
Great. So what I'm hearing is that this is an organization that works with young women in East Africa, South Sudan. You're working with them by providing training, skills, resources, and support. And hopefully that leads to them bringing solutions around social change in their communities. So I'm going to unpack this.
Sure.
I think that so for that first part, we provide training, skills, resources, and support. That's a lot. And I have a lot of questions about what kind of trainings, how are you giving them skills, and why is that separated from trainings, and similar with the words resources and support. So I wonder if there's either a collective word that you can use to really bring everything that you're talking about together, or if there's just one part of that you really want to emphasize. I think another thing that was really great was you included the people you're working with. So a lot of people don't say young women if they're just working with young women. They might just say people. So great on the specificity. And also you included the location, which I think is another question. We work across multiple countries, so in terms of giving funding, so I think it's great to really specify the area you're working in. The other part that was pretty vague was bringing solutions for social change in communities. I think that a lot of organizations, including us, use that language, and it's kind of, what are those solutions, and what does social change mean to you? And what does even community mean to you? Does it mean the community of young women? Does it mean communities, the local communities that they're embedded within? Does it mean the region in general? So I think there's a lot of questions there on how you can get a little bit more specific. And just to back up a little bit, again, I am one person that is giving feedback, and I think that, again, use your opportunities to try to workshop this with as many people as possible, especially people that know, have worked with young women, have worked in the region, and folks that you're trying to get funding with or to partner with to actually give you feedback, and which is a vulnerable thing to do, right? You want to sometimes, I think, show up in these spaces feeling like you have everything put together, but actually having some vulnerability and saying, like, we do our work really well, but we're trying to work on the story so our message comes across, is a really great way to workshop it together and actually create buy-in with some of the people you're trying to partner and work with. But does that make sense, Kathleen, as some feedback?
Yeah, it really does, because that's actually, that is us getting simplified, because we have so much more, because we do trauma healing and mindfulness practices, and I mean, it just goes on, and we have different programs. So just trying to narrow it down there. And that one thing about the solutions, it's their own solutions. It's not ours, their solutions. But it all does make absolute sense. It's just trying to then make that even more concise and clear. So thank you. I know we still have more work on how to uncomplicate what we do.
And I think just to build on that really quickly, their own solutions, like that's so amazing to highlight that, because when you say bring solutions to social change, it can potentially, like the way I heard that was there are solutions that already exist and these young women are facilitating bringing those solutions into their communities. But actually how you framed it is that no, we're working with these young women to come up with their own ideas and their own solutions. That's really key and important to clarify.
Great. Well, thank you, Kathleen. Jason, we have you up next. Take it away.
Yes, good afternoon or good evening. So my name is Jason Friesen. I'm with Trek Medics International, and we develop 911 systems in countries that don't have them.
Mm.
You just want one sentence, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. Great. Love it. Super clear. If you come from a context where 911 is what an emergency system is. So when you say 911 systems, I might just throw in emergency systems, just one thing to think about. And I'd be curious about, from what I'm hearing from that is that you're working across all countries that don't have emergency systems. So if that's true, that's great. But if there are certain areas that you are working with now, it might be important to narrow that, because the next question a funder or investor might say is like, tell us a story about how you're doing that, or tell us a little bit more. I think what you successfully did for me is, it's a great hook. Like, I'm really interested in how you do that, and I want to learn more, which I think is a successful one sentence, right? Because you can't pack everything in there. So especially if you know that a funder like us has priority regions that we're focusing on, or priority countries, it might be really important to specify where that region is. But I think that's actually a great example of I'd actually spin it back to you about how you came to that one sentence, because it is very clear and effective. So do you want to talk a little bit, like maybe the 30 seconds of how you came up with that one sentence, Jason?
Yeah, so thank you very much for your kind words, and I appreciate that to hear. You're exactly right about 911. We originally started 911 where there is none, but we know for those in the British Commonwealth and, well, just a lot of other countries, that 911 isn't necessarily the number, but it rhymes really well, and people in the United States get it. So we've kind of stuck with it, but you know, you're right, we should modify it for a more international audience. But yeah, we're just looking for something, a very clear way to, like you said, hook people and to just get their interest. And this is going on, actually, I know you put that in the parking lot, but your first, the person who made the first comment was actually asking questions that we have too. Like, we can give you very quickly what we do, but building a emergency medical system is not a straightforward thing and has a lot of moving parts. So it's like everybody gets what we do, but then everybody, based on their own backgrounds, have a lot of questions, and they're all legitimate questions, but it's really hard packing it into a clean sentence without turning it into a paragraph. So I guess we try to understate, if anything.
Yeah, and I think there's actually another question embedded in there where, what happens when the work that you do is actually really complicated? How do you actually, convey that message? So we can talk a little bit about that in Q&A. And I hope you and Thomas actually connect after this call to talk a little bit more about that shared problem. Yeah.
Yeah. So Dixon, I noticed you posted your idea on the chat, so I will actually unmute you. And if you want to share your idea, please, take this time.
Hi everyone, thank you. I work with an organization in Kibera known as Tunapanda Institute, and we are committed in empowering the youth by training them in skills in tech, business, and design. During this 3-month period, we realized there's a lot of great ideas in our business month, but these ideas don't get to be executed. So we came up with an idea of an incubation hub whereby these ideas can be actually implemented, to move them from ideas to actual businesses.
And where do you work, Dixon? What's the area that you work in? Region, geographically?
Okay.
Kenya. Okay, cool. Okay, great. So thank you. That's so great. Thank you for your good work. I think I actually remember seeing your idea. Very cool. So what I'm hearing is you work with young people in Kenya and you train them through a business and a design curriculum, right? Is that right? Is that accurate from what I heard? Okay. So I think a question there, and I think the other part of that, which is embedded in my question, is why are you training them in business and design? You know, in order to is a question I always give people after they you know. So we're working with young people to train them with business and design in order to, or you know, like what is? Can you talk a little bit more about the why you're doing that?
Okay, so the way we are doing this, why we focused mainly on the 4 main areas, is because in Kenya, if you realize there's a growth of ICT demand in the market, and equipping them with these kind of skills will enable them to either get employment and or maybe start on their own businesses. And the main reason why we train the business skill, so that they can be able to start and run their own businesses.
Okay, so this is really about supporting young people with employment by giving them skills that they need to start their own businesses, really. This is an entrepreneurship program.
Yeah. So it's about entrepreneurship or employability. There's also the employability bit.
Yeah, so I think I would be, I think this too is also narrowing. It's, I think a lot of youth employment opportunities in Kenya could be pointing to, you know, I have a lot of questions, I guess, from that question. Like, are you connecting young people with businesses that already exist as a way to pipeline them in and showing them that, hey, they have these design and business skills, so they're actually ready to work for your company? Or is it about, you know, giving them design and business skills to start their own organizations in their communities, and that's how you're actually tackling youth unemployment? Is it a combination of both of these? So I guess if there is a you know, the one clear story of how you are, you know, why and how you're actually giving people those skills and where that's leading to, I think would be really important for your one sentence. Does that make sense, Dixon?
Yeah, it does. It does. I'm really grateful. Actually, it does. It does really make a lot of sense. Yeah. Yeah,
and it should feel simple too. I hope this is all feeling simple, and it should feel like, oh, like that makes sense. Okay, like well, I'll just go back and workshop that because this process should be as clear and as easy and as simple as possible. I think that when we start to feel like this work is hard, it means I think that we're kind of overthinking things a little bit. So I love that you're coming in with this mindset of just like, yeah, I can fix this and make sure that it's clear to people. So it's great. And thank you for your good work. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Scott. And I think that we hope that everyone on the call finds this useful to hear other people getting feedback about their ideas and just see how the process could work and get ideas about their own ideas as well, just by hearing this conversation. For now, I think we're going to move forward a little bit and ask Scott a few more questions. I think we can bring it back to maybe some more ideas at the end or some questions as well. But for now, we've talked a lot about making an idea clear, which was, I think, half of the focus of the toolkit that we shared, but there's also this piece about being a compelling idea. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time thinking about that with you, Scott. Do you maybe have an example of an idea that is clear but may not be compelling, or some mix of that to show what compelling might look like, or tell us a little bit more about that from your experience?
Yeah, sure. And I think I can also answer Thomas's, or try to start to answer Thomas's question in this too, which is that in the storytelling toolkit, we have this exercise where you take 3 minutes to share your story with a particular audience. So maybe it's an investor, or maybe it's a donor. And this investor or donor doesn't actually have to be interested in your organization. It's just someone that's offered some time to help you, you know, create a narrative, a clear narrative and compelling narrative for your organization. And I think that also helps put the risk, you know, and makes you a little bit more confident and comfortable because you know there's not much on the line. Also, I've done this with some people who I didn't think were going to invest in me, and I was just like, can you help me build this story? I just really need help as I approach other investors and donors, and they've actually supported us with funding, so you never know what's going to happen. But anyway, just ask for some time to do this 3-minute exercise. You give your story or your pitch in 3 minutes. 3 minutes doesn't have, it's not like the law. You can do 5 minutes or 2 minutes, but the idea is to keep it pretty brief. And then you ask a series of questions to them. The questions are, what resonated with you in my story? And be really clear about that. Another question is, what do you have questions about? So kind of to Dixon's point, you know, luckily I know that prompt, but if you're asking for feedback, you know, one way you could say is like, here's what my organization does in Kenya. I tell you everything about it. Okay, do you still have questions, or what questions do you have? And that helps you understand what's actually being picked up by the audience. Another one is, what was most memorable? Like the one thing that was most memorable about my story. And oftentimes this is like a really, it's one person that they really connected to usually. Maybe it's not, I don't know. I'd be curious to hear what was memorable in your story. You challenge them to summarize what you do, or to summarize your story in one sentence. Say, okay, can you re-summarize or repeat back to me what you heard in just one sentence? If they say, no, I'm sorry, I can't, then there's a clarity problem there. And then what did you like and what would you add? And again, all of these questions are in the toolkit, but I just really wanted to emphasize this because there's been a lot of thought, and we really leveraged a lot of the storytellers at IDEO to build this toolkit. And it's very simple because we wanted to give you activities that helped you bring your narrative closer. So to Thomas, your question of, you know, I'm getting all of these different reads from different people. Well, a donor also is making assumptions about what an investor wants, unless they too are an investor. So I think the closer that you can get to talking to the people who you're really seeking support from, in whatever way that support is, the better it's going to be. And there are ways to make it less where you're just asking for 5 to 10 minutes of someone's time versus saying like, hey, I need your funding or money, can we meet? So I think there's also different ways to use storytelling to actually frame the way you get in the door with meeting with people.
Thank you. Do you maybe have an example about perhaps an idea that you found a really compelling way to say that idea, or that you found successful in talking with partners before in your past work?
Yeah, let's do one that we recently worked on with a different challenge, just so it doesn't seem as, so you can hopefully see it through a lens that's fresh. We recently did a challenge on how might we reimagine the end of life experience for ourselves and our loved ones. And the resulting compelling story was Vicarious is an organization that allows people who are at the end of their life that have a bucket list of things that they want to do but now cannot achieve because they're near the end of their life. It connects them with young people to actually fulfill the list of things that they want to do for them. And those young people take videos of themselves doing that work and send it to these individuals that are at the end of life. And what we've seen, even in just one example with a man named Jerry who was at the end of his life, is that he really felt vicariously, he really lived vicariously through Jenny, who went skydiving for him because that was something that he couldn't do. And before the end of his life, that really gave him a lot of joy to see someone else live something that he wanted to do so deeply. And that's why this is important, because we want to make sure that more Jerrys are able to live their experiences out to the young people that we connect them with. And then for Jenny, it was an ability for her to connect to a generation she doesn't really connect with often. And so we saw a lot of gifts and a lot of advantages for her too. And so that's what Vicarious does. So that's like a very, 1 minute. Hopefully you're like, oh my gosh, I love Vicarious. Like, I love Jerry. I love Jenny. Like, I want to, one, give them a hug. And also two, I want to learn more potentially, or I see the impact that your organization is making, right? And notice that we didn't say like, we're connecting 75,000 people, elderly people to, our list of 6,000 different young people. There are different ways, I think, that if you don't have that, the scale, that you can really draw out one particular story to make it resonate with people, to make it really memorable. I hope, if I asked the group, what does Vicarious do? Hopefully some people would be able to actually relay that back in a really clear way. But that's an example.
Thank you. I mean, when I heard you say that, I saw there was an emotional piece there. There was some specificity about some people and the impact it had on their personal life. So I definitely, that's an idea I hadn't heard about before, and I feel really connected to that.
Yeah, and just one thing there was, I said a bucket list of things that Jerry had never, that a bucket list of things that Jerry wanted to do before he died. And the reason why we explained it like that, or encouraged them to explain it like that, is because they just said bucket list in the first iteration of it. They said it allows people's bucket lists to be fulfilled. But then there were some people that didn't know what a bucket list was. They were like, what's a bucket list, right? But they wanted to keep the power of bucket list because it is a powerful word. So we said, what would happen if you described what a bucket list was in the sentence, or in the story, as clearly and as succinctly, as brief as possible, but you also got to keep that word in your story. Or those two words, I guess. So as an example of what we did through the reiteration cycle, that's a way that you can actually incorporate the feedback you're getting. And while also still staying true to your instinctual, gut vision of what the story should sound like, right? Like Vicarious didn't want bucket list to be removed from their story. Okay, fine. We have this need of people not knowing what bucket list is, so just explain that, right? So that's an example of how to reiterate.
Great.
Does that make sense? Is this making sense to people? Dixon's like vigorously nodding his head.
Seeing some nods here. Again, just a reminder, if you do have any questions during this session, just type in the chat box and we will get right to it. But thanks so much, guys.
Yeah, and Scott, I might invite you if you have like a last sort of 30-second or 1-minute pointer or tip that you want to share with the group. Otherwise, we're getting close to the top of the hour, so we can turn it over to questions soon.
Just thank you for doing all of your work, and I guess the tip is to make it as clear and compelling. Make your story as clear and compelling as possible. I think that's really what it comes down to. You can stop looking for frameworks on stories and just spend your time now and just understanding how to make your idea or your organization's story as clear and compelling as possible. That's like what I hope to leave you with. And the process of trying to figure that out is really by using the people that are around you. So you're not like a writer going off into a cabin trying to figure out how to tell the story in the most compelling way out in the woods. I mean, you can do that to start with, but you really need to make sure you're putting your story in front of as many people as possible who represent the groups of people you're trying to get your message across to. So again, make sure you're building your story with people, because stories are meant to be a ritual that really is about shared experience. So in order to do that well, you need to make sure you're doing that in partnership with others.
Great. Kathy, I'll invite you to throw any questions at us that are either coming through or that came in before.
Yeah, definitely. So we do have a question from Thomas, I believe, was just asking, I think, more along the lines of what Scott talked about earlier in the storytelling toolkit, is if there's like a clear index for a 3-minute pitch, like what is the why, the how, the what, for example. If we could try to maybe find a really coherent and very precise structure for that, to maybe make it a little bit more easier to remember, to have it flow smoothly.
Yeah, it's a great question. And there's a lot of different formats and structures. I could list 20 off the top of my head. So I think find what works for you and what feels most authentic to you. For me personally, I love starting with a story of a person that's being impacted by my organization. But a lot of people don't do that and still are very successful at raising money and deepening the impact of their organization. So do what works for you and just make sure that it resonates. That's the short answer. Not the best of, and I think there are a lot of resources, and maybe we could send some potential structures and formats for everyone if that's helpful in an email, a follow-up email. But really, again, I just want to make it clear that sometimes the structure doesn't matter if with what the story that you're giving is actually being received and the goals of the story are actually being met. So don't get too caught up in the structure. That's what I encourage a lot of the clients I work with on strategic storytelling is that it's really about the way that your story is being received. I mean, not to get political here, but I think there's some political candidates that don't have any structure at all, seemingly, but their message for some reason gets across to a mass of people, and they're able to actually move into positions of power. And I think that that's an example of why, structure sometimes actually doesn't matter in some cases. It's just really how your message is being received.
Great, thanks so much, Scott. So I do have just one last question, and it's from Abela from Dar es Salaam, and she wants to know, how do you show initiative and impact in a story? What's the best way to do that?
I love that. That's so great. Yeah, so something I didn't talk about that's actually not in the story, it might be in the storytelling toolkit, that's really important, is to supplement your story. So what I mean by supplementing your story is to have visuals, to have a deck maybe of different success stories or case studies that your organization has done. And you don't have to present that in your story, but just have them kind of in your tool belt to present in case people ask you questions. Because when you get to this kind of question around what is the actual impact of the work that you're doing, that means, one, someone's interested in actually learning more and wants to take time to understand. So you've done the job of inspiring them and hooking them and bringing them into your world and having them be invested in either you or your organization's work, right? So then the next goal, right, and again, it's a journey. Storytelling is a journey. You want to think, okay, now that I've done that, what is the new goal that I have? And the new goal might be for them to get to understand the organization and the work that you're doing, and that you are actually making impact on the ground. So one example of what we do is we have these beautiful cards of different clients and organizations we worked with, and they have who the client is, what the question was that they wanted to solve, and a quick paragraph on how we solved that for them. And so we have a range of different examples, and it's in our tool belt. And when someone asks that question of what is the impact you've created, we think about, okay, they're working in the space of supporting women. So let's find all the success stories that are related to women and in the geographic region that they're interested in, and then we present that, right? And I also want to say that I know some of you may not have the privilege, really, or the luxury of having an institution of 30 years of different case studies and success stories to pull from. And I totally get that. So I would think, even on a smaller scale, what are the different stories that you can point to when someone asks you about impact, right? And if you don't have stories that you can point to, then one, you either need to go out there and find them, or two, you're not yet making the impact that you hope to create in the world, and that there's some other things that you need to be working on before you get to this point, right? So just the way that I would think about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. Really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for participating in our office hour. We're coming to a close, and I just want to remind everyone that if you have any questions about the Amplify Challenge or storytelling in general after this really great office hour, thank you again, Scott and Chelsea, but please feel free to email amplify@ido.org, and we'll try to answer your questions as soon as we can. Just a friendly reminder that after this video, we have recorded it, so we'll be sending it out for you guys to use as a reference, and we'll also be sending out more info of the storytelling toolkit to use as a guide and really refer to. So over the next couple of weeks, we'll be in the improve phase, and that is when you'll really get a chance to refine your idea, take in all of the beneficiary feedback and expert feedback that will be posted to your idea at the end of this week. Really incorporate it into your idea. Take these tips and tools from Scott and Chelsea about how to really articulate your idea and really get it to show the impact and your ingenuity for this. And we'll announce the winners at the end of January. So thank you so much, everyone, and I'll leave it to Scott and Chelsea to take it away and say thanks.
Can I just do a 10-second exercise, and feel free to be as honest as possible?
Yeah, do it.
And don't worry, it's not another song and dance. But I am, if you want to, I invite you to close your eyes. It's just 20 seconds to close your eyes. And I want you to envision what it feels like to have told your story in a really clear and compelling way. I just want you to focus in on that emotion that you're feeling, like someone really gets it. Like, wow, I totally understand and buy into what your organization is doing, and I want to help you. I want you to just lean into that feeling for a second. Okay, thank you. I saw a lot of smiles. It's great. Thank you for doing that. The reason why I did that is I think we are juggling with a lot of priorities and different things that we want to work on for our organizations. But I do really think storytelling is very key to the success of your organization. And hopefully when you close your eyes and you felt that, you felt really good and you felt really happy and you felt really heard and seen and understood. And I think that's really at the core of stories, is that we want the work that we're doing, the people we're serving, the way our organization lives in the world to be understood in an accurate way, and for people to really believe in what we're doing. Because that not only makes us feel good, but it also helps impact our work. So as you're trying to prioritize all of these different things, I hope you do actually, don't just like, okay, forget about storytelling after this call, but you really give yourself some time and your organization some time to go a little bit deeper with it. So thank you for joining me on that.
And I also just want to thank everyone. I think that the Open IDEO and the Amplify community is so beautiful because of you and all the work that you do. So we're so fortunate and thankful to have spent this hour with you. We hope it was useful, and also we'll follow up with some resources and let us know if you have questions. So thank you so much, and we look forward to chatting with you again. Bye.